Over the past several years, many people have had to make an incredibly important choice that would change their lives forever. Xbox or PS3? We often over-exaggerate the war between these two consoles, but whereas back in the Genesis and SNES days the two consoles were completely different, the 360 and the PS3 are actually quite similar. Heck, the new consoles are even more similar. They both play Netflix, let us talk with friends, and of course let us play great games, many of which are on both consoles now. This list is giving you my personal take on my favorite games from this past console generation. A few rules: only one game per franchise, and exclusives are allowed on the list. So with that said, in honor of the new generation of consoles upon us, as well as my channel hitting 1,000 subscribers, here's my top 10 games of the last console generation. Skyrim. I feel like Skyrim gets too much hate these days, but at the same time it gets too much love. Don't get me wrong, I love this game, it wouldn't be on my list otherwise. But I'm sure half of you were angry that I had this game on my list in the first place, and the other half are angry that it's only at number 10. In my opinion, after completing every main quest and major side quest, Skyrim starts to lose my interest. The only way to keep me invested in this game was to play around with the console commands and install random mods. However, this is the top 10 games for the PS3 and the 360, so I can't use that as an excuse. In the end though, Skyrim is a really easy RPG at its core to get into. It does its job wonderfully, and it looks absolutely gorgeous even on both consoles. A lot of you may prefer Oblivion, and I could see why you would. It's mainly just personal preference for me. In my opinion, the leveling system in Oblivion is kind of a mess, and Skyrim kind of takes it in a more realistic direction. But that's just my opinion. If you prefer Oblivion, then play Oblivion. The Last of Us. This game is beautiful. The story is perfect. The voice acting is superb. It performs great even on a PS3. With that said, The Last of Us may be my most overrated game of 2013. A lot of people are calling this the best game on the PS3 or even the best game of all time. But personally, I prefer games that can take the actual gameplay and make it something unique. The Last of Us's gameplay is a bit above average, with the best parts of it being all the detail on the enemies as well as the enemies not being bullet sponges. Many say that The Last of Us brought back survival horror, but you can see through the walls, people. The survival aspect is very exemplified in the stealth segments of the game, but they're more frustrating than anything else. Even though I don't believe the gameplay did anything new, the story and the visual elements, which I'm not going to spoil, are enough to land this game at the number 9 spot. Oh, and the multiplayer is pretty good too. Just Cause 2. Speaking of unique control, no game has control quite like Just Cause 2. What you've got here is a giant island where you can wreak havoc in the most creative ways by using one weapon, the grappling hook. The grappling hook is seriously one of the best items in any game ever. It allows you to attach any two objects together while having the ability to detach them at any time as well. What makes it so great is how much freedom they give you with it. I love this game because it doesn't just challenge your shooting skills or driving skills, but your imagination and your creativity as a player. There are endless possibilities to what you can do in this game. However, the island is pretty barren in some parts. The story is also quite interesting, and the voice acting is god-awful. I still love it though. And with 500,000 active players every day, the game is truly timeless. That is until Just Cause 3 comes out. In my opinion, you have no excuse to not own this game, because it goes on sale on Steam a lot, and it's super cheap. So please pick it up. Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 was my favorite game of 2012, and for good reason. It incorporated smooth and tight gameplay into a survival-esque free-roaming environment with a great story. Voss is one of the greatest villains I've seen in a very long time, and the game's solid voice acting helps out with that. The characters that you interact with in this world all seem genuine and fleshed out. The game also knows exactly what it wants to be, with some very serious moments as well as some comedy and many instances of over-the-top action. The tone of the game is set so well though, that all these instances feel like they fit in this bizarre world. The entire game is played from a first-person's perspective, as you killing bad guys, hunting animals, and driving, which I suck at. I highly recommend Far Cry 3 to anyone who just wants a fun video game experience that really only a video game can bring. Infamous 2. Someone once told me that Infamous 2 was pretty cool. So naturally I went out and I bought a PS3 along with this game, and my mind was blown. The control in Infamous 2 is outstanding. It may be one of the best 3D control games I have ever played. The parkour is so great that it rivals Assassin's Creed. No, in fact, it's better because of the superpowers. The powers are super plentiful and very easy to use. One of the best parts about the combat, though, is using the environment to turn the fight in your favor, such as electrocuting fence when people are climbing it, electrocuting water to blow up boats, and many other cool things. The story, however, is not quite as good as Infamous 1. It mainly focuses on the main character, Cole, as he tries to collect these shard thingies to become strong enough to fight the Beast, the poorly named antagonist of the game. One cool thing the game does is offer choices which determine if you are a hero or a villain. These choices also determine what moves you can learn. It also determines what color your shirt is. Overall, Infamous 2 is a fun time on the PS3, and if it looks like it's something up your alley, it probably is. Go play it. Grand Theft Auto 5. Yeah, I know this game just came out recently, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't get the credit it deserves. GTA 5 is simply the best sandbox game of the last generation. Many will say that it has nothing improved from GTA 4, but that simply isn't true. Look at this. Now look at this. GTA 5 is much brighter, vibrant, and has more inviting colors than GTA 4 did. 4 tried to be a dark and gritty mob story, but failed mainly because you couldn't tell if Nico was a nice guy or a bad guy. GTA 5 also fixes these issues by incorporating 3 totally different characters, all with different missions to keep the story fresh. The story manages to be better than 4's, but that's not saying much. It has its moments, but it could have been shortened a bit. Some of the best new additions to the game include the weapon wheel, the driving mechanics, and the fully fleshed out online mode that is practically an entire different game than GTA 5. I feel like GTA 5 is the last hurrah of the console generation. Batman Arkham City. Arkham City and Asylum are 2 games that I just simply can never get tired of. I've beaten both games numerous times, and each time I do complete one, I still feel like the game holds up. Which game you end up liking more depends on what gameplay you prefer. Asylum has more of a darker tone and is much more linear, while City is an open world and has a bigger focus on exploration. I prefer City due to the open world and the several improvements such as the addition of the useful gadgets and the creative boss fights. The Mr. Freeze boss fight, as a side note, is by far one of the best parts of the game, and may be one of my favorite boss fights of all time. In the end, Arkham City and Asylum are 2 games that should not fly past your radar, even if you aren't a Batman fan. Uncharted 2. I kept switching number 4 and number 3 back and forth, but I feel like they're in this order for a reason. I never actually played Uncharted until last summer, and boy am I glad I did. Uncharted is a fantastic series of games that, yes, I like more than The Last of Us. Uncharted delivered a game that wasn't solely about reading characters' body language or walking around picking up the same 6 supplies to make the same 6 items, but it was about Nathan Drake going on an adventure to stop the bad guys from doing something. Did I seriously write that? Uncharted wasn't grounded. It had a lot of zany and over-the-top moments, but that's just what made it special. Seeing Drake shoot people and make his way across a moving train was both a sight to see and play. The game doesn't take itself super seriously, but a huge over-the-top action story works as a game because you get to play all of those moments, whereas in a movie, you get bored from watching all of it over and over again. The puzzles are pretty well put together too. Not to mention, these games are simply the best looking games I have ever played. If you don't own a PS3, strongly consider getting one for Uncharted. Whereas which one you like more in the series, I prefer Uncharted 2, mainly just because of its story, but really, you could get into any one of them. Bioshock. Bioshock is a fantastic example of a story that only works as a video game, and nothing else. I'm going to keep this pretty short because I really don't want to spoil it for you. Just know that it's on the number 2 spot for a very good reason. Both Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite are great games, but I prefer Bioshock 1 mainly because of its silent character that wouldn't work on any other forms of storytelling, such as books or movies. I strongly recommend that you play Bioshock 1 before Bioshock Infinite, however. The game that you prefer in this situation is determined on whether or not you prefer a darker tone or a much more brighter tone. While Infinite improves on many things, such as the shooting and whatnot, I prefer the first one. Why? Play it to find out. Have you already played it? Then you know why. Mass Effect 2. These games work best as a trilogy, but I truthfully didn't value Mass Effect 1 or 3 as much as I did for 2. While Mass Effect 1 can be boring at times and slow, Mass Effect 3 can be balls to the wall action. Mass Effect 2 is the perfect combination, mixing in actually interesting dialogue and self-contained action where it's appropriate. Mass Effect 2 is also the best game in the franchise because of the interesting characters. While Mass Effect 1 and 3 had some pretty good ones, Mass Effect 2 has the absolute best cast, including Mordin, Thane, Grunt, just to name a few. Other characters make a return if they didn't die in the first game, such as Tali and of course Garrus. Garrus is literally the coolest character in the entire franchise, and he's definitely earned his place as a fan favorite. But enough about the supporting characters, let's talk about you. You play as Commander Shepard, and you decide what he or she looks like, how he or she plays, and how he or she acts. The main thing that this game has going for it, that others don't, are the choices. When you make a decision, it could change how others view you, or could result in a drastic story change, such as someone dying or a plan going awry. In the end, one playthrough of the series isn't enough. You have to play it several times in order to see everything. The Mass Effect series, in my opinion, is the best series of games to come out since the 360 and the PS3 launched. So yeah, there's my list. Do you agree with it? Disagree with it? Leave your favorite games from last gen in the comments below. I also have a bunch of honorable mentions, which I'll put right over there. So yeah, I want to thank you guys for 1,000 subs. It really means a lot to me that you all subscribe, and this is the hardest video I've worked on yet. So yeah, thanks for watching. More top 10s and reviews on the way. See you then.